try to move through it as quick as we can.
Okay. Well, given that, why don't we just go ahead and fire up? I'm going to call us to order at 4:01. I'm going to see if Erica doesn't mind giving us a roll call.
Sure. Director Collin,
I'm here.
alternate Vice President Tipton,
Present.
Vice President Cromings is absent, and President Lopez.
Here. Great, we have a quorum. We'll go ahead and start with general manager and department manager comments. Kick it over to Patrick.
The only comment I have for tonight is just let you all know we have scaled back the freedoms that we temporarily received, and so we're now back to masking and some separation in the common spaces in the office. We have, based on feedback from staff, we are going to cancel, unfortunately, our all employees communications dinner next month. Instead, go back and do what we did last year, which was to have small events at each of the work sites during the week to provide awards and safety recognitions and those kind of things. So I apologize for that, but there's definitely a concern with folks and their potential for exposures and breakthroughs. So we're going to respect that for the staff and hold off on that meeting this year. That's all I have.
I haven't had the opportunity to attend one since I joined this board, so I'm kind of bummed. I was really looking forward to it, but hopefully next year.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll have a spring one just for you, Chris.
Yeah, there you go. I'm not going to fight you on that. Just kidding. All right.
We can make a spring. Can you let us know when those local events are going to occur so we can maybe drop into some of those?
Sure,
Good
we
idea.
can absolutely share that with you. Yeah, we'll have one at each of the operating facilities, and then we'll probably have a small office as well.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Then see if we have any other department manager comments.
This is Ray. I have one. We are looking at the potential of refinancing our bonds. I did know this was possible, but actually Monterey Regional is doing it, so we looked into it, but we could potentially save up to $1 million in interest payments. You basically put the principal and interest payments in escrow for the early, so that they're available for the 2024 payment, which is when we could call the bonds, and interest rates are so low that doing that, we could still potentially save a significant amount of money. So we will schedule a presentation for both the EC and the board in September, but just kind of wanted to let you guys know that is out there, is something we can potentially do.
Good call. Thank you, Ray. Any other department manager comments?
Yes, this is Caesar. So
Caesar.
good evening, executive board. Just a quick heads up, we're going to be bringing forward the annual operational report at the full board meeting this month. And one thing I did get out of that, the initial data, is that we probably had our busiest year during COVID, tonnage and traffic than we've seen at any of our facilities. So we'll definitely bring that back to the board to show those numbers. But the most impressive thing is we've probably had the smallest amount of staff members available to cover the shifts that I've ever seen since I've been with the authority. And I've been here 20 years, but we've had up to about 33% of our staff out at one point, whether it's medical leave, COVID leave, family leave. So it's a historic moment for us, but at the same time, we had a lot of struggle. So we'll bring that forward to the full board on the 19th. But also touching on that same note, I just want to let the EC know that we're also going to be bidding our biggest contract out, which is our organics processing, which is our largest contract that we got left out there with the vendor. And we're going to be bidding that out because we've had the same vendor for about 10 or 11 years now. So it's time we put it out to bid and see what we can get for our, how much bang we can get for our buck. So just give you guys a heads up. We're bringing all that forward in August, and it's going to be informational only, but just giving the EC a heads up on that.
Thank you, Caesar. Any committee member comments? All right, seeing none, we'll close that item and go to public comment. This is an opportunity for the public to share comments regarding items not on today's agenda. We didn't receive any ahead of time. We'll just remind folks that the raise hand function is encouraged. It's either in your reactions tab or at the bottom of your screen, depending on your version of Zoom. If you're on a landline, *9 will raise your hand and let us know you wish to be recognized. I do see one hand up on the attendee side from Anthony Rocha. We could go ahead and give him the ability to unmute himself. Anthony, the floor is yours.
Hi, I just wanted to let you all know that I'm here. The executive committee representative wasn't able to make it, so I just wanted to make sure that someone from our city was here at least. I can't participate in the meeting, but I'll just be here to listen. So I just wanted to let that be known. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Anthony. All right. Seeing no other public comments, we'll close the public comment portion of the agenda and head into our consideration items, which begin with item 1, the minutes of the June 2nd meeting. Is there any discussion from members of the committee? Hearing none, is there any public comment on the minutes from June 2nd? Seeing no hands, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. I'll move approval.
And I'll second, seeing as we're at 2, and go ahead and ask for the roll call vote. Thanks, Erica.
Alternate Vice President Tipton
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. We'll go to our May 2021 claims and financial reports. Ray Hendricks.
Ray, I believe you're on mute if you're talking, just so you know.
I was
Audio
having a good
speechless.
conversation with myself. Thanks, Mandy. Okay, we're gonna go through, we have May and June both on the agenda, so I'll go through May extra briefly. At the end of May, we were at 99.2% of our revenue budget. So at the end of May, we're only about $200,000 away. Expenditures are all in line as the end of May. Landfill operations is about 400,000 higher than it was last year at May, and organics is 500,000. So organics is just higher tonnage, and operations is just the way the new mechanic and some of the staffing is allocated. But like I said, everything well in line for May. So unless there's any questions.
Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll take it out for public comment. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close public comment and bring it back. And I believe you're looking for a motion to accept these financial.
So moved.
I'll second. Erica?
Alternate Vice President Tipton
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. And I think we're staying with Ray, right?
I have the first 4 and we're gonna see how quick I can get through them. Okay, so for June, we are currently still recording revenues and expenditures to June. We have some accruals, but this is where we were as of July 26th. So revenue wise, we are just shy of $2 million over the budgeted amount. 700,000 in solid waste that Caesar mentioned. This is our busiest year, and we actually expected a drop off. And diverted materials is also up about $700,000 over budget. For expenditures, everything's in line. Right now we have just shy of 900,000 remaining in the operating budget, and I do not think we have 900,000 of, well, I know we do not have 900,000 worth of invoices left. We're at 960,000 that were charged the prior year as of this morning, and we're typically just over $1 million. So far exceeded our revenue projections and still have quite a bit of room in the operating budget to wrap up the fiscal year. That's it for me, unless there's any questions.
questions? Drew, Rob? Seeing no hands, we'll go to the public. Seeing no hands, we'll bring it back. Closing public comment. Drew, floor is yours.
No comment.
Oh, no, we need a motion.
Just move approval.
I'll second. All right, back to you, Erica.
Alternate Vice President Tippin
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, thank you. All right. Now I gotta minimize the screen because you took me full screen and it blocked my agenda. So let me jump back to mine here. And what I see next is our June 2021 quarterly investment report. And that's back to you, Ray.
Right, so at the end of June, we have, I'm looking at the wrong sheet. Can you bring that up? Oh, thank you. So we have $33 million in, I'm looking at Chris. I need to look at the screen bigger. Sorry.
What's wrong with looking at me, Ray? Come on.
Well, I have a picture of you taking up half my screen and like a really small print of the cash and investments, and my eyes aren't that good anymore. So at the end of June, we had $33.3 million in cash, most of it invested in LAIF, earning a very small percentage, but that it's invested in treasuries short term for the most part. So at this point, we're hoping they'll start to pick up, but money's safe and we have plenty of money to pay our bills.
All right.
That's it for me.
Easy enough. Any board comment? Any public comment? I'll bring it back to Drew for a motion to accept.
Move approval.
I'll second. Erica?
Alternate Vice President Tipton
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Then we're jumping into item number 5 here, which is a resolution approving supplemental appropriation of $21,552 for Cal Recycle's beverage container recycling city county program. I think that's back to Ray, your popular guy today, Ray.
This is my last one, I think, and if I have more, I'm not prepared to discuss them. So this is an annual money. This is the beverage container that basically the CRV money that's left over comes back to the cities for litter control and other recycling programs. We do pull these together and manage them through the contract administration for all 4 of the South Valley cities. So since the funding comes in after the budget's approved, I just need approval of supplemental appropriation for $21,500 so we can start to make plans on with our member agencies on how that money is going to be spent.
All right, any committee input on that idea? We'll take it out to public. See no hands up, we'll bring it back. Drew?
Move approval.
I'll second. Roll call, please, Erica.
Alternate Vice President Tipton
Yes.
and President Lopez.
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Now we'll leave the Ray section of the agenda and kick it back to Patrick for a discussion on the construction of an outdoor education center at JCL.
I'll just do a quick introduction. This is actually Mandy's presentation, but so with the pending relocation of Sun Street and not really having adequate space available at Madison Lane to support this, we've been discussing internally about relocating our training center and education center that we have at Sun Street, which is really a combination of our outdoor compost training area, garden, and obviously using the space within the office for large meetings of, whether it's children or community groups that come in for educational efforts. So with that, we've decided it's probably best, since we have all these new programs and a lot of organic focus, to have this training center built at Johnson Canyon in the vicinity of the organics area. It'll provide a great opportunity for us to continue the work we're doing. And Mandy will tell you the great idea we have for doing this relatively cheaply and yet having a really great working space for these types of events. So with that, it's all yours, Mandy.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Everyone can hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Just didn't want to be talking to myself for the next couple minutes. So good afternoon, President Lopez and distinguished members of the Executive Committee. As Patrick has already mentioned, we're looking for support from the Executive Committee for the construction of an outdoor education center at the Johnson Canyon landfill. So for those of you who, well, hopefully some of you remember, but it's been a while, but the Authority School Education Program was expanded several years ago when the board approved additional funds to enhance the reach of our programs by funding in-person, hands-on educational programs that encourage protection and preservation of the environment through our waste reduction and recycling education. But with the SB 1383's emphasis on organics recycling and edible food recovery, staff is now proposing to develop and construct an outdoor education center, again, at the landfill to continue these programs' hands-on learning experience. So as Patrick already kind of mentioned, with the impending move of our Sun Street facility, and there's a lack of allocated space at the new Madison Lane transfer station for a center of this size, staff would like to basically reestablish a facility at the landfill that would include indoor, outdoor meeting spaces and demonstration and training facility, similar but a little bit expanded to what we currently have at Sun Street. And the center would help to expand our facility tours, which pre-COVID were very popular. Our recycling presentations, composting workshops, garden demonstrations. We'd like to expand into carbon sequestration projects and other possible new educational training programs as a result of 1383. Next slide. Please, thank you. So we've already scouted out 3 possible locations at Johnson Canyon for the Ed Center. You can see based here on the map, all 3 options are actually located east of the landfill and composting operations. We didn't want to butt up to anything that was happening at the landfill. The first option was option A, which we called the Hilltop Depackager. It sits adjacent to the depackaging facility and the composting facility, which is that white little dot on the map. Option B was the water tank field location. And then option C is the big tree, because there's a big giant tree right next to the location. So each location had its pros and cons, and each location also would require site prep and improvement work. Next slide. So option C, the big tree, was ultimately selected due to the big, beautiful oak tree that would hopefully provide some nice shade, but also because it's a secluded location and it's away from, again, the landfill operations. You can see that we have a slight view of the landfill, which is that orange arrow, but it also sits outside of the floodway or drainage way, which is a dry creek bed that actually runs along this side of the property. This location also has access to water and has plenty of room to house the approximately 2,000 square foot education center, plus our demonstration areas that we'd like to create. Next slide. So this is our design concept. It's for a non-permanent center, and it would be constructed out of 5 40-foot by 80-foot storage containers that would be retrofitted and reconstructed to form a classroom, which 3 of them would make the classroom, which is your big green square on the picture there, an exhibit hall, and then an office and storage space, which would then create a shaded outdoor training courtyard in the middle. We would, of course, incorporate recycled content or reused materials into the design and to the materials and the feel of the center. We would utilize solar panels for a power source, as well as portable toilets would be utilized. As I already mentioned, this location would require some minor pad and road improvements, as well as a space for a small parking area to accommodate tours. Base rock foundation would also be needed to be constructed to level and stabilize the center. The site preparation and some of the center construction or installation work could also be conducted by in-house operations staff. The purchase and possible retrofit of the storage containers for the center would, of course, also be conducted through a formal request for bids process. Next slide. So this is a sample image of what we think the center could look like. This is, of course, is not an exact rendering, but kind of gives the basic idea of the design and feel and layout of the center, how the containers would be configured to create that courtyard in the middle. Johnson Canyon can be very windy, so we wanted a protected outdoor area where we could do presentations and workshops. And the Beetle is not included. The VW Beetle, I don't think, is included in our request, just to be clear. Staff is researching options for the purchase and construction of the center, and we're looking at either contracting with a storage container company that would provide full retrofitting and full build installation services, or the authority completing the retrofitting and work in-house, or possibly a combination of the two. We did receive initial quotes, and there's a wide range. So, next slide. Thank you. The initial quotes we received range from the low end of $59,000, which was just for the purchase of 5 unfinished containers, up to $250,000, which is 5 complete, delivered, constructed, finished containers. And that finished meaning there's insulation, there's drywall, there's doors, there's windows, there's HVAC. So based on these ranges, we are estimating up to $250,000 would be needed for the entire project. Again, a competitive bid process would we'd utilize in order to select the most cost-effective option for the project. And if supported by the EC and the board, a budget request would be included in the annual capital improvement budget schedule for the September board meeting. And that's all. That's it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Questions from committee members?
The only
Rob?
question I have is why are we looking at this as a permanent, as a temporary instead of a permanent? Oh, sorry, Rob, I didn't see your hand up.
You're good.
Well, we're saying non-permanent because we're using the storage containers. So, technically they could be moved. The idea was, hopefully we wouldn't have to move it, but a landfill is a living, breathing beast that can move around. And obviously, while the area we've selected is not landfill location, but just in the, in case. So that's kind of why we were trying to go with storage containers that could not easily, but could be moved if possible, and also a reuse option.
Perfect, thank you.
Rob?
So you definitely partially answered this, Mandy, but I'm curious because when I was looking at the locations, I first was honed in on the next to the depackager because I thought that's pretty cool. You're near an existing building. You can also do demonstrations of the depackager. Then my mind kind of went to the location closer to the scale house. And of course, then you've got existing buildings right there, some existing infrastructure, and you've got some equipment and stuff there that's interesting to see. So I mean, I guess you answered it in part, because that where the tree is, it's more secluded and such. But still, it seems like it would be nice next to the depackager. And then kind of well, somewhat of a related question is, I don't really know back in the good old pre-COVID days, how often that facility gets used and your anticipation of how much this would be used and kind of the maximum capacity. Because I'm also thinking about some of the logistics like the porta potties and how that could get interesting with having lots of people. So kind of a mixture of questions there, however you want to answer that. I'd love your thoughts.
Sure. So good question about the depackager, because there were several of us on staff that thought, oh my gosh, that would be a great location. It's right there. But it's also extremely windy because you're up on basically a hill. And there's already some planned projects that would be happening there for operations. You also have a lot of big trucks that are coming into the depackager space. And so some of that would already, kind of be taken up. And we didn't want to crowd operations with school buses or tour buses coming in and having kids around. And So that was one of the reasons why we decided against the hilltop by the depackager. And the location that we did select by the big tree is not as windy. And the other location, the water tank, is in that drainage area. So we couldn't necessarily build anything in that area. So it kind of left option C as our go-to. And then I think the other questions were around maybe like capacity and like how much would this be used?
Right.
You know, before COVID, I want to say that we were averaging at least a tour or workshop or presentation at least a couple times a week. So, you know, we were really, I feel like it would get good use, and we would also be able to maybe expand the size of some of our tours, because we usually have to limit it in terms of, you know, we have no meeting space at Johnson Canyon at the landfill to host a tour. Everything happens in a car, or, you know, you drive to a location and then you get out and you meet and you talk. We kind of have that at Sun Street, but we'll also, you know, potentially not have that at Madison. So this was a good compromise of at least having some kind of facility where we could have a meeting space and demonstration area, and something that was a little bit more permanent than what we currently have.
Yeah, thanks for that. And just a follow-up on that then, and to kind of Drew's point of potentially making it more longer term, has doing septic, has that been looked into?
We hadn't really talked about that.
And perhaps it's at least worth it to have some sort of a discussion or some cost estimates there, because it could potentially, I mean, depending on the cost and all that obviously would make it more of a permanent and more, you know, easier capacity wise and logistics wise. So there's something to think about.
Yes,
One more
good.
Up your budget, Mandy. One more container.
Yeah,
They're
you know, my only,
conducive to it because it's fairly level, and you know, you would have to check the drainage profile for the soil there, but it's definitely possible.
yeah, my only
Yeah.
question, Mandy, is about the
Yes.
design and layout. I mean, the tree, we chose to be near this beautiful tree, and then the design doesn't kind of incorporate it. Was that just required due to the layout? I mean, if you put that tree at the top of the U, I think it'd be kind of a cool centerpiece. But again, just kind of, it kind of seemed like we chose a tree because it's gorgeous, and then we kind of put it behind the storage space.
Yeah, that's a good point. The design concept is just a concept. We're not married to anything yet. So that's a really good point. We were thinking that the tree would kind of be part of, you know, some of our demonstration areas, and it would be like a place that we would go to and have, you know, additional, you know, whatever else we were going to be doing. But yeah, it could definitely be incorporated into the design concept as part of the building. That's a good idea.
All right. I share the same feelings that both Rob and Drew brought up in terms of, you know, their opinions. I want to say that I completely agree with both, and also just that other point added, but didn't want to reiterate too much. So given that,
Great.
we'll see if we have any public input. Don't see any hands up, so we'll bring it back to the committee. Any other thoughts to share with Mandy?
Just one quick comment, and I'm completely stating the obvious, but I do want to say what I like about it being at Johnson Canyon, in addition to the things that has already been mentioned, is to have it more centralized in our service area makes it a lot easier for schools in the South Valley cities to go and do field trips, as well as the public to attend some of the workshops. So I really like that aspect of it.
Yes, thank
Agreed.
you, Rob. That's part of what we've been kind of focusing on, is how could we expand tours at the landfill to South County, and this would give us a hub and a place to do it. So it feels like, yeah, we could really expand some of our programs that would help, you know, serve South County in a closer way.
All right. Anything else you need from us in terms of input today, Mandy?
I think it was just provide input and direction, because I think our plan was that we would then take this to the board for their approval in August.
All right. So I'm hearing a lot of support from the EC, if I'm not mistaken. Great. Okay, then I think they're looking for input and direction, so that is complete. So we'll move on and head to item 7. Thank you, Mandy. The appointment of a board representative of the Salinas Valley Recycles Advisory Committee. Patrick?
So as you know, we reconstituted our Citizens Advisory Committee to be a broader base of both business and public and community interests. So with that, we're still meeting every couple of months. We haven't had a meeting this summer, and of course, COVID has sort of curtailed some of our work. But one of the components of that advisory committee is the appointment of a board member. So the way the resolution reads is, or the bylaws is that the president or his or her appointee would be seated on this. And I know, Chris, you have indicated the scheduled date that the committee has selected at this point. It has conflicts for you. So we just wanted to bring this forward to the EC and see if you want to have a discussion around making an appointment or reaching out to board members for an appointment to that committee.
And can you share that time for the record, Patrick, when those meetings are held?
Mandy or Erica? I don't remember off the top of my head.
It's the fourth Thursday of every other month from 3 to 5 p.m.
Yeah, and I know I have a standing conflict, and so we kept trying to move that. Didn't work, and I didn't want to ask everybody to change their schedule. And so I look to the rest of the EC and see if there's any direction here or desire, if we should take it to the full board to see if we have a member of the board desiring to serve in that role. Any thoughts?
Volunteering?
I definitely think we should take it to the full board and see if there's anybody interested in doing it. I know with starting a new job, I don't think I could commit to that right now either.
Okay, let's open it up for public comment. See if there's any public input. Seeing no hands, we'll bring it back. And I think that's a good direction to place on next month's agenda, just this in the same way, the conversation with the date and time, so that folks can perhaps cross-reference before showing up, and hopefully there's somebody whose schedule that does fit that can help us fill that role. Okay, so with that, we'll consider direction given and no action necessary at this point, and head into our discussion on future meeting protocol. Back to you, Patrick.
So based on our discussion in June about considering going back to either full live meetings or a hybrid version, the direction was to hold off at this time and to bring this item back to the board and EC for discussion in August. So obviously a number of things have happened since August. We've seen some changes in both local, state, and federal guidance. We've had a proliferation of the Delta variety. A lot of people are concerned because there are more and more documented cases of breakthrough infections to vaccinated people, though those are typically less virulent than the original variety. But nonetheless, there's obviously a lot of discussion going on about sort of stepping backwards a little bit into more protective measures. So having said that, Erica went out and we've acquired a OWL teleconferencing system. So I think some of you are already familiar with that. It's become quite popular amongst municipalities that are trying to run either full Zoom meetings or hybrid meetings where you have a mix of in-person and remote board members. So we have the capability of doing hybrid meetings now. And potentially even or using it for increased public participation. So my recommendation last June was that regardless of where we end up, we think it's a great opportunity to increase public participation by continuing that going forward, even when we eventually get out of pandemic restrictions and get into normal operations, to have that available so that we can encourage more remote public participation in our meetings. So it was a very inexpensive unit, relatively speaking, for the benefit we get from it. It's around $1,000, and Eric and I played with it a little bit and starting to figure out the best way to run those meetings. And some of you may be familiar. Some agencies locally are already using it, and it's becoming quite popular. So we have 3 options in front of us. Going back to full live meetings, which I'm thinking probably is not going to be the best solution at this point. I think some members may still have some concerns over that. Hybrid meetings, or continuing to just use the Zoom platform and have this sort of revisit this discussion every month as we see guidance come forward and results of pandemic testing sort of guide whether we should go, when we're ready to go back to full normal operation. So we just want to bring it back at your request and have a discussion.
Yeah, I know you're probably going to have to look to Roy on this, knowing that the governor's allowance ends at the end of September in terms of our ability to be, the changes to the Brown Act that were done by executive order will expire at the end of September. And I think it's AB 339 that's in process now, and it's not the prettiest of bills in terms of creating opportunity for us to stay in any hybrid mode. But Roy, any thoughts before we open it up for wider conversation?
Well, yeah, I would agree, President Lopez. It's unclear whether the governor will extend the exceptions to the Brown Act. I don't believe he will at this time. I think he's looking for the legislature to act. But unfortunately, it's what we have on the table. While it is hybrid in nature, it's hybrid for the public, not the elected officials per se. So as of right now, we don't have anything that would change the requirements that for those elected officials that wish to participate remotely, which they can. You would then still have to open up the location that you're at to the public, post the agenda at your location, and if any member of the public were there, let them participate. So that would still be the general requirement for any elected official who wanted to participate remotely.
Thank you, Roy. Yeah, so it sounds like we're kind of up against a wall in terms of real flexibility. I think I don't know, I'll open it up and see if Drew or Rob have any thoughts.
I think we're going to get a lot of pushback from the residents, particularly in light of the fact that the Bay Area is pushing mask mandates again, and in light of the fact that we've got New York and LA trying to go through and push either immunizations or masks as well. I think right now, for at least August and September, I think we should think about staying in the full Zoom mode and revisit it at that point. That might be the best bet.
I agree. It's tough. I would have given a completely different response to that question even 2 weeks ago, maybe even a week ago, but things are happening fast. We're starting to see events canceled and changed and stuff. And I agree with Drew.
There as well. I'm wondering if we can perhaps with the board give the authority to Patrick to make the call after September, knowing that I'm going to, putting on my political hat, if there is another executive order from the governor, it'll probably happen after September 14th. And I don't know that we'll meet after September 14th to be able to give additional direction. So I'd like to, at least maybe we consider giving that authority to Patrick to make the call through October, perhaps, knowing that might all shift in that time frame. I'm hoping we're on the England model in terms of their impact from the Delta variant with a little extra masking and additional vaccinations. They saw an extreme drop off rather quickly in the last couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that's what we see, but not knowing, and with potential major shifts. I think just giving that direction to Patrick to make that call, depending on when things change, would be something that would be appropriate from us.
I think that's fairly clear. So what I'll do is I think, so you're not recommending, I don't think we need to go back to the board in August with this discussion. I'll just make the call to bring this up again, assuming we've gotten some direction or we see some changes coming. We'll bring it back to the EC in September for discussion again. And maybe by then we'll get some feedback from Sacramento on where they're heading with this. And if it looks like there's going to be an extension, well, like you said, the 14th is 2 days before our September board meeting. So
Exactly.
it doesn't give us a lot of time. Hopefully it's not a hard stop on September 14th, but they'll respect the fact that we're all planning to do and let us know long before then what their intentions will be to extend or have it a soft stop, meaning that we can keep the September meeting on Zoom and transition to full live meetings in the month of October. So I'll use that discretion judiciously based on what we see and keep in touch with Roy on this. And I'll report back to the EC at the September meeting.
Great. Let's see if we have any public input on this item. Seeing no hands up, I'll bring it back to EC. Any final thoughts? All right. And we'll consider that direction given and head into item 9, an update on the Sun Street Transfer Station relocation project and the 1-year notice of intent to withdraw.
All right. Well, we have some good news. So we've made a lot of progress. So as you can see in your packet, we have the final draft of the letter of intent, which is the structural framework for the various agreements and operational considerations for us to relocate and cohabitate Madison Lane Transfer Station with Republic Services. That letter of intent, again, is non-binding. It's really just was our starting point for negotiations. Some of the activities that are outlined in the LOI, like preparation of a lease, preparation of transfer station or transportation agreements, and et cetera. Those things are actually already underway. So we're sort of, we got to the framework. Now we're starting to put the details in. So what you have in front of you right now is the non-binding letter of intent. So if you could scroll up, Erica. I'm going to skip through the recitals unless anybody has a question and go right to the components of so the first, Republic has offered us 2 lease areas, and we'll pull up a map in a minute, but we refer to them as lease area 1, lease area 2. After a lot of discussion, several site visits, including one yesterday with Caesar, Brian, and our Sun Street Transfer Station supervisor, we've opted to not lease the second smaller space that is after the gatehouse, but we'll be leasing the large area in the front, which would be the location for our household hazardous waste facility, all of our materials recovery operations, all the recycling center functions. All that stuff would be located at the front end of the transfer station. And I'll go through a little of the layout scenario. So at this point, we're only looking at leasing lease option number 1. And we'll get more into this during the September EC meeting once we have actual lease and lease terms to bring forward for review and discussion. The second component is operations of the organics receiving area. Again, we've come to agreement on that. This is important for SB 1383. There's a lot of monitoring required under the law. Green waste, curbside green waste in particular, tends to be a bit dirty, especially in the Salinas area. So having staff on the ground with a small loader that can break apart loads and remove some of the contamination is actually beneficial to do it. It's easier to pull that out of a load coming out of the back of a garbage truck than it is to pull it out of the back of a load coming out of a transfer truck that can have 3 or 4 garbage trucks in it. It's just much easier. Gives us feedback on where that material is coming from, helps us identify, for instance, routes within the city that maybe are have more contamination, maybe need some focused outreach and education. And again, allows us to do the mandated observations and monitoring of incoming organics. So they've agreed to, again, what they call as a license. It's just basically they're giving us the rights to operate within their operational envelope. So this would require a couple of employee staff and a loader to do all that pre-cleaning, and it makes the operation at the back end a lot easier at the compost facility. Scroll down, please. So the other component is Republic is interested in allowing us to continue to provide transportation services just for materials destined for Johnson Canyon. That's primarily going to be organic materials. We had a long talk today about what that may entail. One of the expansions that's going to be required, and most importantly for the Salinas area, is that we're going to get several different things that need to be isolated inside the transfer station. We get clean lumber. That's a different process, a different marketing effort at the back end. We're not composting it. We have the green waste, which may have some food waste in it when we kick on the residential collection. We have source separated food waste, which is the sloppy stuff coming in from the back of restaurants. And then we have bagged produce. And so there's different options that Republic's open to discussing. We've gone the gamut from having another debagger in Salinas. Right now, I don't think we have the demand for that to put a second unit in, but that could come down the road and make it more cost effective for us to have a debagging operation at the transfer station. But in the interim, they need to isolate that as a separate feedstock so that it can be transferred down as a single material type that would be destined for the debagger. So there's basically a lot of organic separation and stockpiling that has to happen inside the transfer station. And they're very willing to work with us on that and to meet those needs as they develop over the next year or so with the 1383 regulations. So we'll have that transfer operations, and of course on the organic side it'll be at least 2 and up to 4 different organic waste streams that they would isolate and we would transfer down to the various areas of the Johnson Canyon operation. We've also included in there that authority would have right of first refusal should Republic decide at some point in the future to sell that facility. We'll talk a little bit. The city's working through franchise amendments and updates with Republic. And so at some point, those agreements expire in the future. And we want to just make sure that, our operation there doesn't just instantaneously expire as well, that we have those options at least to consider buying that should Republic not be a future hauler for the city after the current term or the next term that they may be negotiating right now. We've listed a few other areas of negotiation about public education. Again, there's not really space out there to do that, and it's going to be a very busy facility. So with the amount of traffic that's going to be moving through there, probably won't work, but there are joint things that we will still do with Republic, and even possibly some very controlled tours that could happen there. So we've got those things and a few other options in there that we just sort of leave open for future discussions. And then finally, this is a part you've all seen many, many times before, permitting and environmental review for the site. Republic does have the permit entitlements now to operate at the higher capacity that would accommodate both the authority waste stream and their existing permanent waste stream. So they were successful, as we were in the past, to get the permits changed to not have a specific vehicle count, but to have an operating condition under Title 14 that just basically says you can't impede the public right of way with, vehicles. So one of the big design things that was sort of a sticking point that we've overcome is how do we provide enough queue space inside that property to accommodate, which on our peak days can be in excess of 40 vehicles sitting in line. That is how that's how used our facility is, and that's not uncommon in the summer. So we've helped them and worked with them and come up with a design that provides more than ample queuing space on site, so that it's very unlikely that we would ever see cars backing up onto the street. So they've done a good job, and we'll be sharing their final designs with us in the next couple of weeks. Those are being worked on right now. So I think they've overcome some of the issues there. Obviously, they still need to. They'll still be needing to work with the Bronda community so they understand what's coming, and then understand the mitigations that they've put in place to help make it a better facility. And clearly, with their franchise agreement and with our agreements, they're poised to make some investment and actually upgrade that facility and do some things to make it better. So that's the LOI in its entirety. It's very simple. It's just outlines the structure. I'll get into a couple other components here in a second, but some of this we still need some guidance we'll talk about under closed session. But the intent is we would like to take the LOI in this format pending your support and any comments or edits you might request, get this to the board and actually execute it at the August meeting, so that we have our clear marching orders how to move this project forward and get it completed. So I'll stop there for a second and just ask if anybody has any questions on the LOI.
Rob?
I don't have any questions on the specific items of the LOI, but can you just elaborate a little bit more on the steps? And if it's more appropriate for this to occur in closed session, that's fine. But steps meaning we're reviewing it today, we're going to give input. It's going to go to and presumably going to go to the full board for action later on this month. And what are the steps after that?
Okay, so here's the steps, and we've had a lot of discussions with the city on this to try to align it with some of their actions related to the franchise agreement. So the intent is we bring this is our first presentation of the project to the executive committee. Again, this is non-binding. This is just the structure of the partnership with Republic at Madison Lane. So it goes to the executive committee today. We'll talk a little bit about the actual lease itself that we're just starting work on. We've been presented with some terms, outline terms, that they're going to convert to a standardized lease, but we needed to agree on terms. So we'll talk a little bit about terms during closed session, get some advice on that. But the intent is to complete that lease by the end of August, bring it back to the EC in final draft form for your review and consideration, and actually take that to the board at the September meeting. That's the best scenario. If we can work through all these things, which we're trying to do. The concurrent thing that's going on is we've also received Republic standard transportation agreement that they use. And of course, we're a government agency, so the agreement, we're doing some massage, we're gonna have to do some massaging on it because it's really, written more around private sector transportation vendors. So we're working through that. Again, the goal is to have a draft of that, final draft for executive committee consideration in September and taking it to the full board. So those are the two key ingredients. The key agreements is the lease itself and the transportation agreement. Those are both binding. So at that point, we'd be bound to the project. There is a third piece that we've talked with the city, and that is an MOU between the authority and the city that basically spells out once we're bound to this agreement to relocate, And there are some provisions in the lease about when that will happen based on Republic completing improvements they have to do on the site before we can take possession of the lease space. And the MOU basically says that once we sign those binding agreements, 3 things happen. One, the city would unconditionally rescind their notice to withdraw. And at that point, we're bound. Not the LOI doesn't bind us to anything. It'll have to be the action of signing the lease that would bind us. They would rescind their notice. 2, they would agree to pass through our full green waste rates. So equalization of rates, which we've been talking about for 6 or 7 years. And that would bring them and bring the authority into compliance with Section 15 of our JPA, which requires that. So again, with the binding signature, they would agree to equalize those rates, and they will reflect that and memorialize that in the terms and conditions of the franchise revisions they're working on right now. And the third piece is they will, they can't make this happen, but they can strongly encourage and support, and that is that Republic Services actually terminate the old 2004 agreement that facilitates that subsidy that's been going on for a lot of years. And Republic has indicated multiple times in front of the board previously and also in our meetings that they're more than willing to do that as long as the city's okay with it, and the city will effectuate that with language in that agreement. So basically those 3 things happen. We resolve the sort of the sticking points we've had for several years. City comes back into the fold. We become working partners again. And I just really want to thank Steve Kerrigan and Jim Pia for all the work they've done. They've been great partners in this project and trying to make this go forward. So the MOU, our intent is to actually bring the MOU back to the board in August. Because again, execution of the MOU by both the city and the authority shows goodwill, but it's not binding unless and until we get to the point of signing the lease, which won't happen until at least September. So we basically, the city would agree to bind this. So what ends up happening is we'll bring again, the LOI that you're seeing on the screen. We'll bring the draft MOU to the full board. Unfortunately, that was a little behind schedule. We weren't able to present it here, but it's very simple. Roy's office helped prepare it for us. The city has it right now for consideration. It says exactly what I just said. There's not a lot of meat to it besides they would agree to do that. And we'd like to have them execute that the following Tuesday after we execute the LOI on Thursday the 19th. They take it to council on the 24th, and we'd have the framework in place. And then the only thing that's left to do for September on is to finish negotiations and hopefully execute lease and transportation agreement. So that is the tentative schedule right now.
And so just one more time, the LOI, you're expecting the board to pass this at our next meeting. I just want to be clear on that, even, with the other timelines projected to the end of September.
We'll be definitely recommending it. Yes, we do recommend execution of the LOI and execution of the MOU. Those are the first 2 steps. Yes.
And so today from the EC, you're just looking for approval to send this up to the full board for approval.
Or any feedback you might have on it. There's still some moving parts here, so I don't want to say this is all wrapped up completely, but I think we've made enough real progress here that we feel it's ready for the board to start to take some action. And again, the August action isn't binding, but what will follow will be the actions that will bind the authority to move forward with the project. Bind Republic to provide us the space. The timing of relocation is still a little up in the air, even though we've been told and there's been some preference to try to get this to happen sooner than later. The date that Republic has thrown out is that they are intending or hoping to get all of the improvements done by March 1st. I'll be honest with you, that's fully dependent on Mother Nature and what kind of winter we get. Because by the time we execute these, I don't know what kind of permitting they may need. I just don't know the timeline. I don't think they do either. So the actual relocation date is will be a little bit open-ended. It'll be based on them giving us a notice, and then we have so many days or months to relocate after they provide notice that improvements are completed. And at that point, we would begin moving our operations, which initially won't be a major effort. Well, I shouldn't say that. I want to underplay it. We got to move a lot of equipment, boxes and storage equipment over there. That will take some effort, but it's not something that's going to take a long time. The stuff we have stored and other things we have at the warehouse in Sun Street, those things they're not going to come with us. We're just going to have to figure out where we're going to move some of the equipment and parts and materials we have at Sun Street, but that's not contingent on relocation, because it's really trucks and drop boxes and then some of our HHW equipment and supplies. Those are the primary components for relocation. So more to come. I think the other piece that we will want to talk about, and it's really the third. Let me stop there for a second and just see if you have any questions on the timeline or the lease or any of the things we've talked about at this point. So there's one last piece to this.
I don't see any additional hands up. Let's keep going, and then we'll open it up to the public.
Right. So within the packet, you also have a letter from the public to Jim Pia, the Assistant City Manager, and basically it outlines their rate setting. So I'll remind everybody, this is one of the issues we've been going back and forth on a lot. Just as a corporate policy, the public doesn't relinquish rate setting at their facilities. We've been told that flat out. And I think I reflected that at the June meeting as well. So what we did ask for is let's start the discussion about what does that rate look like and how is that rate set. So what you have in front of you is their sort of initial proposal for how the rates will be set effective January 1st. So we're starting with the minimum charge. So currently our minimum charge is $17 for basically a pickup filled up almost to the top of the bed, level with the bed. And then they have a per yard rate and then their per ton rate. You'll notice they are substantially larger than ours. This is what I think they refer to as a merchant facility, meaning it's standalone, operates on its own. It doesn't have other revenue sources as we do. Therefore, they're recovering not just the cost of disposal that we're charging at our facilities, but they're also recovering all their transportation and capitalization on the transfer station itself. So their rates are going to be higher. And so this is their process. So I think the first concern I heard from the board was obviously not wanting to relinquish rate control. We do have some level of control on rates. And that is in the sense that about 70% of the rate is made up of our charges. So the board can indirectly influence rate adjustments every year. So their CPI adjustment will only apply to transfer station related costs, which are about 30% of the cost. So that's the sort of hybrid model that we sort of agreed on, that the board still maintains some level of control over the rates in terms of the tipping fees, but they would be getting an annualized cost of living adjustment, which includes our transportation costs as well, and their transfer station operational costs. They'd be getting a cost of living adjustment on that. That would be basically capped. This says 5.75%, but that's only if there's a extenuating circumstance. The reality is that their cap will actually be tied to the city's franchise agreement, which also has a 4% cap. So that 30% component of their charge would be the only part that's subject to the annual cost of living adjustment. plus anything we add on top of it. So they're going to be providing a little better letter than this that has a little more detail and example in it on how they'll do it. I know it sounds confusing. It's actually pretty simple. There's two pieces in the rate. So they charge, let's say as an example, $96 a ton is their weighted rate. $68.50 of that is our cost, and the balance is their transfer station related costs, and that's the piece that would be subject to the annual cost of living. The board would still have control over the $68.50, which we think is based on what we're seeing right now in trends, and even with some draft budget work that Ray and Caesar and I have been working on. We think that $68.50 is probably going to stay flat for a while. And there may even be some opportunity, I don't like to say this, but even to reduce the rate a little bit. But we'll talk a little bit more about that, I think, going forward. Because the one thing we don't have an answer for, and that is, what is the revenue risk of the higher rates? Will we lose customers to Monterey Regional? Possibly. Their rate is $20 for a minimum charge. So would a customer, to say $5, drive the extra distance? They might. The mere effort of relocating, as when we move to Sun Street, it takes a while for customers to readjust and come back to the facility. So marketing will be real key here as we hone in on the actual relocation date. Mandy, her group, all of us actually working to have a very robust marketing plan to make sure people understand on a date certain we won't be at Sun Street any longer. So there's a lot of things we can do to help protect some of the revenue bleed that we think is going to happen. So we probably won't be recommending a reduction in the tip fee in the first year until we get some experience, but there is a possibility down the road that we could see a smaller, modest decrease in tip fees if we retain all of that revenue from the self-haul customers. And that's revenue now that we'll be deriving from Republic, because they'll be collecting that money, shipping the garbage to us, paying us our tipping fees for organics and MSW at the landfill. So we'll still retain a lot of that. We just don't know what the loss might be. So I'm going to stop there before I get everybody really confused on this, but this is the rate setting outline that Republic has provided us. We have requested today, we had a meeting at lunchtime with them again, that they provide an estimated full rate schedule prior to the board meeting. So, because this is just one example, this is the refuse rate for self-haulers. There's also, they have to provide an organics rate, which will be a little different. And there's a few other materials, construction, demolition material, waste tires, things that they're going to collect the revenue for at the gate. Are those rates, how much different are those rates going to be from the current authority published rates? So our intent is at the board meeting to also provide a side-by-side comparison. This is what we charge, this is what they charge. So the board is fully informed on what's going to happen with rate setting. Is that
any additional input from members? Seeing none, I'll take it out, see if we have any public input on this presentation. Seeing no hands going up, I'll close the public comment portion and bring it back. I'm comfortable with this moving forward. I think the things you've outlined that will be brought forward for the full board meeting are critical in order to really develop that comfort, especially around the large question that's loomed the entire time over tipping fees. So I would appreciate those side by sides and understanding what controls will and won't be available for us as an authority and an agency in that structure. I know that it's part of what we've been asked to have up and on the table, but knowing what that looks like now that we've got meaningful numbers would be critical for me.
yes, definitely we'll bring that to you. And they promised to try to get us something next week. So we'll have that hopefully in time for board discussion.
Great. Any additional input? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and wrap this item and ask Patrick to take us through the future, the look ahead calendar.
Okay. So again, typical August, you saw a lot of the items today, all the ratio and all the financials that during closed session. Mandy's Outdoor Education Center, though I think that'll get moved to a board. That'll be changed from closed session. I'm sorry, from consent agenda to presentation item to the full board. So really everything you saw on the agenda today is on there. We'll have our, as Caesar said, we'll have our tonnage and diversion report he'll provide. We will take off the future meeting protocol based on the discussion today, and we'll hold that over till September for discussion. And then we'll have 2 action items related to the Salinas withdrawal. The first will be the update on the transfer station with the requested actions of approving the letter of intent. And then a second separate item would be approval of execution of the MOU with the city of Salinas to equalize green waste rates and rescind their notice to withdraw. So you basically saw just about everything, actually did see everything that's going to be on the agenda except for one item. So is there anything addition you'd want to add to the agenda, modify, reorganize?
All right, seeing no input, we'll see if we have any public input on this look ahead agenda. Look ahead calendar. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close the public comment portion, bring it back. And with that, I believe we're heading into closed session this evening. For members, that email came out from Erica this afternoon. Should be in your inbox, the additional link for closed session. Then I'll kick it over to council to see if there's any additional items that need to be read before we go to closed session.
No, President Lopez, just the closed session items, and then open it to public comment should anyone want to public comment on the closed session.
All right, so you'll see we have items 11, 12, and 13 that'll be on our closed session agenda this evening. If you have any public input, I'm sorry, any public comment, now's the time. So please use the raise hand function. Seeing no hands going up, we'll close that and recess into closed session. Will we be adjourning out of closed session or coming back to open session to recess, council?
We'd be coming back in the open session to recess.
Okay, perfect. Then we will go ahead and recess the closed session. We will be back as soon as we're complete with that. Thank you.
So do we actually have a different Zoom for the closed session? Because I did not get one.
Yeah, you got it in your email from Erica, and Erica gave me the time 3:24 this afternoon. Or no, I'm sorry, that was the other one. It was 1:55.
1:55, but I can resend it to you.
If you would, please, because I don't see it in my inbox.
Okay.
Okay, it's on its way.
And I need one too, Erica, please.
To your personal or regular?
Authority, that's regular, please.
Okay, will do.
Okay, looks like we got everybody who's coming back. So we lost quorum at 6:14, and so the meeting ended in closed session. Roy, anything else we need to announce coming out of closed session?
Nothing to announce out at this time, Mr. President.
All right. Given that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn at 6:16.
Thank you, Mr.
We did
President.
at 6:14 to be correct. Thanks, Roy. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Good
Have a
night,
good evening.
everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Bye.
everybody.
Good night.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.